Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today it's time for us to review ScourgeBringer for the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the excellent PJ O'Reilly and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Do you love a properly hard challenge? Do you thrive in hostile and punishing game environments where constant death is an expected and indeed necessary part of the cycle? Well then, Flying Oak Games' ScourgeBringer might just be right up your street. Here we have a tough-as-nails roguelite that funnels its players through a never-ending succession of procedurally generated death chambers, forcing them to not only learn, but to perfect its slick combat and movement mechanics, reacting with split-second timing to enemy attacks, and using the environment to their advantage in order to survive. There's hints of Celeste in the little murder rooms here, whispers of Dead Cells and Hyperlight Drifter in the sumptuously detailed graphical style, and if you've got the stomach for it, ScourgeBringer is equally as addictive and satisfying as any one of its most recognizable influences. The world has been blasted to smoldering ruins by a mysterious structure that's appeared in the sky, a monolithic alien artifact that has come to be known as the ScourgeBringer. That's where the game gets its name from. An endless procession of brave warriors and explorers venture into its depths hoping to find answers, but none are ever seen again. You assume the role of Kira, at least that's how I think it's pronounced, it's spelled like this, who just so happens to be the greatest of all warriors and now is challenged with descending into the uncharted depths of the ScourgeBringer in order to bring an end to the planet's torment and discover the truth behind the devastation that has been wreaking upon the whole bloomin' place. As soon as you jump into the action here, you're immediately faced with a stiff challenge. There's no time wasting or hand-holding. If you want to survive, you're going to need to get a grip on your abilities as soon as you possibly can. This is a game that's all about constant quick movement, and as such you'll employ a nifty double jump, chainable dash attack, and the ability to climb walls and cling to your surroundings in order to attack a relentless barrage of enemies as ferociously as possible from all angles, rarely letting your feet touch the floor. Kira has a straightforward sword attack to dish out damage, complemented by a heavier slash that can temporarily stun foes, both of which charge her gun's ammo meter as you take on enemies, enabling her to fire off a few precious rounds here and there in order to take down larger foes or get herself out of a tight spot. It's a small core set of abilities for sure, but the speed in which you need to employ them here, the precision that's required, and the slickness with which they can be combined as you dance around the ScourgeBringer's innards makes for an endlessly addictive and compelling challenge. Levels here are made up of a succession of tiny little murderizing rooms, a handful of merchant areas where you can spend blood, which is the currency, in order to purchase temporary upgrades, and the altars of blood where Kira can choose blessings that gift her with boons for the duration of a run. Bosses and mini-bosses known here as judges drop judge blood, which you retain when you die and can spend in the game's hub in order to permanently upgrade aspects of your core stats or indeed unlock new abilities and attacks. All of this, combined with random weapon and perk drops that occur as you kill enemies and fully explore levels, provides a satisfying and constant sense of progression in the face of ScourgeBringer's unending procession of death. As you slowly level up using Judge Blood, Kira's slash attack attains the ability to deflect enemy bullets back where they came from and to knock foes into each other, causing group damage. You'll unlock a devastating Fury attack that locks onto multiple foes before dishing out just a metric boatload of damage. You'll also get a ground pound, dragon punch, and stronger combos for your base sword attack. It's actually surprisingly deep. Not to mention your health bar, which is almost pitifully small starting out, will gradually get bigger. You'll earn fast travel and the ability to stun enemies for longer periods of time, but even then you'll never really feel like you're on any less of a knife edge, as ScourgeBringer continues to up the ante as you progress. It took us a good few hours of constant repetition to best the first area here, finally defeating its mini-boss and ludicrously tough end boss, and moving on to the next realm where we died almost immediately. Of course, death returns you right back to the beginning of your adventure, and not only are you then faced with running the gauntlet you just spent really quite a long time beating once more, but the game has now added all manner of new beasties, mini-boss fights, and challenge rooms into the mix. It's almost overwhelming and would certainly be grounds for jacking the whole thing in if it weren't for the fact that this game's combat is so marvelously slick and addictive. Kira dances through these battles delightfully, effortlessly stringing together attacks, dashes, dodges, and wall jumps as she blasts her enemies into satisfying satisfying little droplets of blood. The game's music as well, a frenzied combination of electro and heavy guitar riffs, only kicks in when you attack an enemy and stops suddenly when you take a hit. It's a small touch, but one that has a massive impact on the action, adding a ton of drama to each and every onslaught. Graphically, as we mentioned, there's more than a passing resemblance to Dead Cells, Celeste, and even Hyperlight Drifter here, a wonderfully atmospheric pixel style that's got a ton of little incidental details to enjoy as you swoop and dash deliriously around the 6 realms that make up the fiendishly difficult maze at the heart of the ScourgeBringer. And unsurprisingly, if still thankfully, it runs absolutely flawlessly as well. This one has been in early access on PC for some time, and it shows. In both docked and handheld modes, no matter how much carnage is happening on screen, the action remains perfectly smooth. Flying Oak Games has also, quite mercifully, made concessions here and there in regards to difficulty should you need a little bit of a leg up. Jumping into the accessibility settings menu presents you with the option to turn the game's speed right down, even as low as 10%, or up as high as 150% if you're mental, as well as the ability to slow down enemy bullet speed and change the rate of HP regen between normal, extra HP drops, and total invulnerability. Yeah, invulnerability. It was the only way that PJ was able to see a lot of what this one's got to offer in time for this review, as it's so mercilessly tough, and aside from being a useful option for non-hardened roguelike runners, it's also a great tool for practicing against enemy types in later areas without the threat of having to rerun the entire thing looming over you. ScourgeBringer is a tough old game, a wonderfully pure experience that's laser focused on providing a properly stiff but satisfying and rewarding challenge. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, of course. If you find yourself getting frustrated by the constant repetition and death that's an inherent part of the roguelite genre, you're going to have a really hard time here. However, if you're down for a challenge, you'll find a slick and addictive action title that provides hours upon hours of tight combat wrapped in a wonderfully atmospheric little package. ScourgeBringer is a supremely slick and addictive roguelite adventure that flings its players headlong into non-stop frenetic combat and never lets up. This is an unapologetically tough game, and if you struggle with the kind of death, live, death, repeat cycle, then you may find it a little bit hard to put up with. However, if you're not put off by a challenge, or if you're a Celeste or Dead Cells fan who's just craving more, what Flying Oak Games has conjured up is sure to absolutely delight. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and oh my great goggly goodness, I love this game. I've not actually at the time of recording delved into the accessibility side of things. I did have a look because I was curious to know what was there and I saw it, but I've kept it relatively pure for myself. I will obviously, after I finish recording this bit, be going and, recording footage for the game, where I'll probably try that. So if you think that's contradictory, non-linear time. There are moments when you can fall out of the flow and it can be really quite infuriating, but at the same time it only ever feels like you yourself, you're the reason that it's not going well. You have fluffed up. You've not, you didn't reflect, or you didn't stun that enemy when you really should have done, or maybe just move out of the way. That enemy you don't have to finish killing that enemy just yet. It's better to save your skin for now and then come back to it later, but you're dealing with so many different calculations in your head that you're going to end up making mistakes. But it's so rewarding when you get it right, and when you get into a real groove of it, and you're able to, sort of do the first level, and you're able to do a near flawless run, which is unlikely, but it is obviously entirely possible, then it's just unbelievably satisfying. You feel like an absolute god, and then you make one mistake, or you stand on a spike floor for too long and the spikes hit you, which, honestly, they have hit me far more times than I'm willing to admit. I forget they're there, but it is just insanely good fun. The fact that you manage to, when you come back and you got the judge blood and you're able to bolster your, your abilities and things like that, means that you constantly feel like you're making progress, which is one of the biggest problems that I've had with previous roguelike and roguelite games. So it's just wonderful. It's engaging, it's visceral, it's just hugely satisfying to play through and do it well, and with the accessibility options it can even be really quite accessible. It's a good game, you should play it. There's a free demo, so there's no excuses.